Robert Bobby Cletus Driscoll was an American actor who performed on film and television from 1943 to 1960. He starred in some of the Walt Disney Studios' best-known live-action pictures of that period: Song of the South, 1946, So Dear to My Heart, 1949, and Treasure Island, 1950, as well as RKO's The Window, 1949. He served as the animation model and provided the voice for the title role in Peter Pan, 1953. He received an Academy Juvenile Award for outstanding performances in So Dear to My Heart and The Window. In the mid-1950s, Driscoll's acting career began to decline, and he turned primarily to guest appearances on anthology TV series. He became addicted to narcotics and was sentenced to prison for illicit drug use. After his release, he focused his attention on the avant-garde art scene. In ill health from his substance abuse and with his funds depleted, his body was discovered on March 30, 1968, in an abandoned building in the East Village of Manhattan. Driscoll's parents were encouraged to help their son become a child performer in films. Their barber's son, an actor, got Bobby an audition at MGM for a role in the family drama Lost Angel, 1943, which starred Margaret O'Brien. While on a tour across the studio lot, 5-year-old Driscoll noticed a mock-up ship and asked where the water was. The director was impressed by the boy's curiosity and intelligence and chose him over 40 applicants. Robert Bobby Cletus Driscoll was an American actor who performed on film and television from 1943 to 1960. He starred in some of the Walt Disney Studios' best-known live-action pictures of that period: Song of the South, 1946, So Dear to My Heart, 1949, and Treasure Island, 1950, as well as RKO's The Window, 1949. He served as the animation model and provided the voice for the title role in Peter Pan, 1953. He received an Academy Juvenile Award for outstanding performances in So Dear to My Heart and The Window. Driscoll was cast to play Jim Hawkins in Walt Disney's version of Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, 1950, with British actor Robert Newton as Long John Silver, the studio's first all-live-action picture. The feature was filmed in the United Kingdom, and during production, Driscoll was found to not have a valid British work permit, so his family and Disney were fined and ordered to leave the country. Treasure Island was an international hit, and several other film projects involving Driscoll were under discussion, but none materialized. For example, Haskin recalled in his memoirs that Disney, although interested in Robert Louis Driscoll's second long-run Disney contract, allowed him to be lent to Independent Horizon Pictures for the double role of Danny Josh Reed in When I Grow Up, 1951. His casting was suggested by screenwriter Michael Cannon. In addition to his brief guest appearance in Walt Disney's first television Christmas show in 1950, 1 Hour in Wonderland, Driscoll lent his voice to Goofy Jr. in the Disney cartoon shorts Fathers Are People and Father's Lion, which were released in 1951 and 1952, respectively. Driscoll's last major success, Peter Pan, 1953, was produced largely between May 1949 and mid-1951. Driscoll was cast with Disney's Little British Lady, Catherine Beaumont, who was in the role of Wendy Darling. He was used as the reference model for the close-ups and provided Peter Pan's voice, and dancer and choreographer Roland Dupree was the model for the character's motion. Scenes were played on an almost empty soundstage, with only the most essential props, and filmed for use by the animators. In his biography on Disney, Mark Elliott described Driscoll as the producer's favorite live-action child star. Walt often referred to Driscoll with great affection as the living embodiment of his own youth. During a project meeting following the completion of Peter Pan, though, Disney stated that he now saw Driscoll as best suited for roles as a young bully rather than a likable protagonist. Driscoll's salary at Disney had been raised to $1,750 per week, but Driscoll had little work from 1952 on. In March 1953, Driscoll's additional 2-year option had been extended, which would have kept him at Disney into 1956, but was canceled just weeks after Peter Pan was released theatrically. After Driscoll left the Disney Studios, his parents withdrew him from the Hollywood Professional School, which served child movie actors, and sent him to the public West Los Angeles University High School instead. There, his grades dropped substantially. He was the target of ridicule for his previous film career, and he began to take drugs. His drug use increased. In an interview years later, he stated, "I was 17 when I first experimented with the stuff. In no time, I was using whatever was available, mostly heroin, because I had the money to pay for it." In 1956, he was arrested for the first time for possession of marijuana, but the charge was dismissed. On July 24, 1956, Hedda Hopper wrote in the Los Angeles Times, "This could cost this fine lad and good actor his career." In 1957, he had only 2 television parts as the loyal brother of a criminal immigrant in M Squad, a long-running crime series starring Lee Marvin, and as an officer aboard the submarine S-38 in an episode of the World War II docudrama series The Silent Service. In December 1956, Driscoll and his longtime girlfriend, Marilyn Jean Rush, eloped to Mexico to marry despite their parents' objections. The couple was later re-wed in a ceremony that took place in Los Angeles in March 1957. They had 2 daughters and 1 son, but the relationship did not last. They separated, then divorced in 1960. He would have nothing to do with his 3 children for the rest of his life due to his drug addiction. He was charged with disturbing the peace and assault with a deadly weapon after 2 hecklers made insulting remarks while he was washing a girlfriend's car, and he hit one with a pistol, but the charges were dropped. His last known appearances on TV were small roles in 2 single-season series: The Best of the Post, a syndicated anthology series adapted from stories published in the Saturday Evening Post magazine, and The Brothers Brannigan. Late in 1961, he was sentenced as a drug addict and imprisoned at the Narcotic Rehabilitation Center of the California Institution for Men in Chino, California. When Driscoll left Chino in early 1962, he was unable to find acting work. Embittered by this, he said, "I have found that memories are not very useful. I was carried on a silver platter and then dumped into the garbage." In 1965, a year after his parole expired, he relocated to New York, hoping to revive his career on the Broadway stage, but was unsuccessful. He became part of Andy Warhol's Greenwich Village art community, known as The Factory, where he began focusing on his artistic talents. He had previously been encouraged to do so by artist and poet Wallace Berman, whom he had befriended after joining Berman's art circle in Los Angeles in 1956. Some of his works were considered outstanding, and a few of his surviving collages and cardboard mailers were temporarily exhibited in Los Angeles at the Santa Monica Museum of Art. In 1965, early in his tenure at the Factory, Driscoll gave his last known film performance in experimental filmmaker Piero Hillicher's underground movie Dirt. On March 30, 1968, 2 boys playing in a deserted East Village tenement at 371 East 10th Street found Driscoll's body lying on a cot, with 2 empty beer bottles and religious pamphlets scattered on the ground. A post-mortem examination determined that he had died from heart failure caused by advanced atherosclerosis from his drug use. No identification was on the body, and photos shown around the neighborhood yielded no positive identification. His unclaimed body was buried in an unmarked pauper's grave in New York City's Potter's Field on Hart Island. Late in 1969, Driscoll's mother sought the help of officials at Disney Studios to contact him for a hoped-for reunion with his father, who was nearing death. This resulted in a fingerprint match at the New York City Police Department, which located his burial on Hart Island. Although his name appears on his father's gravestone at Eternal Hills Memorial Park in Oceanside, California, his remains are still on Hart Island. In connection with the re-release of Song of the South in 1971, reporters researching the whereabouts of the film's star first reported his death. For his contributions to the motion picture industry, Driscoll received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 1560 Vine Street in 1960. In February 2009, singer-songwriter Benji Ferry released Come Back to the Five and Dime Bobby D, a concept album based in part on Driscoll's life. In September 2011, American singer-songwriter Tom Russell released the song Farewell Never Neverland on the album Masabi, an elegy for Bobby Driscoll as Peter Pan.